Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a hilarious set of letters between a husband and wife, penned by the great Yiddish writer Sholem Aleichem. And really, they boil down to one timeless question. And look, I know what you're thinking, but no, this isn't some new reality show. This is actually the heart of a story from over a century ago. And it feels surprisingly, maybe even uncomfortably relevant today. So, let's meet our cast of characters. Their whole relationship plays out through the letters they send back and forth. You've got him, Mנחem Mendel. He's the dreamer. He's off in the big city, chasing the next big deal, convinced he's about to strike it rich. And then you've got her, Shina. She's the realist, armed with this just devastating wit. And she's back home in the shtetl, basically trying to keep everything from completely falling apart. Okay, so let's start with Mendel. We first meet him as he dives head first into his latest foolproof plan. He's just breathlessly writing home to Shina, telling her all about this amazing new venture. And Mendel, he is the absolute classic Luftmensch. It's a Yiddish term that literally means air person. You know the type. A dreamer, a schemer, someone with these grand plans but no visible way to support them. They basically deal in air, in pure potential, not in actual physical stuff. So he writes to his wife, and he's all excited. He says he's just learned from some big shot broker that all his old ideas, buying and selling land, were totally worthless. Why? Because it was just land and sky. No. The real money, he's now 100% sure, is in forests. All right, let's break this down a little, because Mendel's schemes, they all follow this very specific and honestly hilarious pattern. So we're going to use this first forest deal to see exactly how it all works. And this cycle it's just a masterpiece of self-delusion. It all starts with a rumor he hears from some expert. Then he comes up with this supposedly foolproof plan. But when he's confronted with, the most basic questions, the whole thing just collapses into absurdity. And then, and this is the crucial part, he writes home, explains his glorious failure, and just moves right on to the next big thing. No lesson learned. So you can just picture this, right? The potential buyer asks him for the simplest details. What's the name of this forest? Where is it? How big are the trees? And Mendel, he has no clue. He's trying to sell something he has never laid eyes on and knows literally nothing about. And he just stands there, in his own words, like a vessel full of shame and disgrace. So this whole grand forest deal, this thing that's supposed to be worth millions, it doesn't end with a bang, it ends with a card game. I'm not kidding. The supposed buyer and the supposed seller finally meet in the same room, and it turns out they know each other. They just burst out laughing at how ridiculous the whole thing is and decide to play cards instead. And Mendel is just left there totally baffled. But that's only half the story, right? We're missing the response from his wife, Shina, and her letters. They are just masterpieces of folk wisdom and pure, unadulterated sarcasm. She doesn't just call out his business plan. No, she goes deeper. She questions his entire connection to reality. Forests, she writes, what do you know about forests? Her letters are packed with these sharp, down-to-earth proverbs that just slice right through his nonsense. And this is what's so brilliant. You see this complete and total disconnect between their two worlds. He's living in this fantasy land of abstract millions and chains of brokers. She's living in the here and now, a dry riverbed, hungry kids, gossip at the market, and just plain old common sense. So, after that whole forest mess, you'd think, okay, maybe he's learned his lesson, right? Nope, not even close. The cycle just starts all over again. But this time, the schemes get even bigger and, frankly, even more absurd. He just completely brushes off the forest disaster. He gets all poetic about it, calling it a dream, a vision of the night, a day that has passed. See, for Mendel, who cares about the past? The future is where the real money is. So what's next? Sugar factories, of course. He comes up with this grand plan to build a 500,000 ruble factory right there in their tiny little town. And Shina just dryly writes back that the only spot available for his factory is in the new cemetery, and by the way, the local river he'd need has completely dried up, leaving behind just a bunch of vermin. So there's that. Does that stop him?
Of course not. The bigger the failure, the bigger the next dream. So forget sugar, now we're on to Siberian gold mines. He's gotten wind of this incredible deal. We're talking gold, silver, copper, lead, the whole shebang, all for an absolute steal. He is 100% convinced that this 10 million ruble deal is his ticket. This is the one. There's just one tiny little hurdle. He spends all day, every day, just trying to get past the doorman of the rich tycoon he needs to sell it to. He can't even get in the building. And then we get to the peak, the final ultimate deal, an estate in the Caucasus where the land itself just spits oil out of the ground, 1 million poods of oil a day. This is it. His direct line to the financier Rothschild in Paris. Until his partner decides to, check a map and finds out the place doesn't actually exist at all.
So the final collapse is just spectacular. All the brokers who sold him the idea for the non-existent oil field turn on each other, and then they all just decide it was Mendel's fault. So after all of this, you have to wonder, right? Why does he keep going? And this is where we get to the real heart of the story, the truth behind all the comedy.
And who else but Sheena Schindel could sum it all up so perfectly? She uses one of her mother's classic proverbs, and it just nails the absurdity of his world, a world built entirely on third-hand gossip and fantasy.
And here's the kicker. This is Mendel's big takeaway from everything. Even after being totally humiliated, he doesn't blame himself. He doesn't think, wow, I was really foolish. No, he blames fate. He decides it must be decreed from heaven that he's not meant to be rich. But, he says, a man must keep toiling and seeking his fortune anyway. For him, you see, the dream itself is what keeps him going. It's the whole point. And that's really the genius here. It's a hilarious look at a specific time and place, yeah, but it's also a timeless story about that human need to dream, to speculate, and to believe against all odds that the next big thing is just one deal away. Which really begs the question, doesn't it?